In many previous posts, I have addressed the problems with modern cosmology based on naive realism, not knowing the source of the Big Bang or the reason for the Big Bang, not knowing what happened in the Planck epoch since there were no laws of physics, not knowing why the cosmic inflation phenomenon is so precise, not knowing the nature of dark energy, dark matter, and the so called cosmological constant conundrum, where the calculated value is very different from the observed value. So there are huge gaps, and furthermore, the visible universe with 2 trillion galaxies, 706 trillion stars, uncountable trillions of planets is less than 0.01% of the visible universe. 97% or so is invisible dark matter, dark energy. Of the 3% remaining as atomic, most of it is hydrogen and helium and invisible interstellar dust, therefore. So the visible universe is 0.01% atomic. Atoms are particles, and particles have dual nature, both as wave and particle. When not observed, they disappear as probability waves in mathematical space. So huge conundrums, and yet the model somehow works in creating theories and technologies, and without the knowledge of the general theory of relativity, we wouldn't have GPS, and all the theories of relativity and quantum mechanics have given rise to technologies. The model is successful, but it hides the truth. So let me propose to you an alternative to modern cosmology, which comes from ancient wisdom traditions, particularly the yogic and Buddhist view in the Eastern wisdom traditions of India. In this view, our senses, by the way, we know the universe only through our senses and how we interpret the senses. But in this view, our senses don't inform us about an external world, but rather they project the experience of the world. And this is a cornerstone of both yogic and Buddhist philosophy. This perspective challenges the common assumption that our senses passively receive information from a pre-existing objective reality. It suggests that our experience of the world is actively co-created by our minds and our senses. So there are 5 senses, and the 6th sense in this worldview is the mind. So there are different ways to understand this projection. First is the entanglement of vrittis. So vrittis are the fluctuations of consciousness that appear as sense perceptions, images, feelings, and thoughts. In yoga, these vrittis are mental fluctuations that shape our experiences. The senses become entangled with these fluctuations, projecting interpretations and meanings onto raw sensory data. These vibrations are also referred to as Shaktis. So both the Buddhist and Vedantic traditions, yogic traditions, recognize subtle energetic vibrations that form the basis of reality. Our senses and minds interact with these vibrations, interpreting them as the tangible world and ourselves as the body and mind. And of course, all this is an interdependent co-arising. The Buddhist concept emphasizes the interconnectedness of all phenomena. Nothing exists in isolation, but rather arises in dependence on other factors, including our projection. Furthermore, there's the understanding of the emptiness of self. The notion of an empty self can be confusing. It doesn't imply nothingness or the absence of consciousness. Instead, it points to the lack of a fixed, independent, and permanent ego identity, separate self. Our sense of self, like everything else, is seen as a dynamic and impermanent process arising from the interplay of sensations, thoughts, and emotions. This means that our self isn't confined to a particular place. It has no location, either inside the body or outside the body. It's more like a constantly changing pattern of experiences. And the experiences are intermittent. Even the body, often considered the anchor of self identity, is seen as an assemblage of impermanent processes. Our perception of a solid, continuous self is an illusion created by our mind. So, this basically says this whole, what I've said, can be summarized as understanding the illusory nature of the self and world projection. And this has profound implications for our everyday lives and spiritual practice. It reduces suffering. By letting go of attachment to a fixed self, we can become less vulnerable to negative emotions like anger, fear, and craving. It enhances our compassion. Recognizing the interconnectedness of all things fosters a sense of empathy and understanding of others. It opens us to liberation. If the self and world are seen as projections, then the possibility of transcending these limitations and experiencing the underlying formless reality becomes more tangible. So essentially, fundamental reality is formless, and it modifies itself into experiences such as the mind, the intellect, the ego, the five subtle senses, and so on. The five subtle senses, but also the five gross senses, prana, energetic body, and then physical body, which then projects as the physical universe. Now, all this is, by the way, summarized very beautifully in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, the warrior, he represents the conflicted separate mind. And Krishna represents the field of spirit or consciousness or presence or whatever else you want to call it, okay? And so presence, consciousness, awareness, fundamental reality, all mean the same thing. All mean the same thing. And in chapter 13, Krishna does say, I am the field and the knower of the field. Krishna is the field of consciousness. Arjuna is the field of the separate conflicted mind. So here the field, often referred to as kshetra, refers to the physical body, the mind, and the senses, which are considered instruments for experiencing the world. So your body is an instrument, a species-specific instrument for experiencing the world. And of course, we can extend that through modern technology, microscopes, hadron colliders, telescopes, etc. However, the body is still the instrument, and any other instrument is an extension of the instrument, including this technology that I'm using to let you know my thoughts. So the field is, once again, the physical body, the mind, and the senses. They're instruments for experiencing the world. The knower of the field, kshetragya, refers to the eternal soul or consciousness that resides within the body and is the true experiencer of the world. It is the divine being guiding and informing the experience of body, and through the body, the experience of the world. So the field is awareness. Soul is awareness. Mind is modified awareness. Intellect is modified awareness. And ego is a conglomeration of sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts that we identify as ourself. It's our self-image, not ourself. And this then projects at the five subtle senses, the five gross senses, which then project as space, air, fire, water, and earth. You can say matter in its vacuum state, matter in its solid state, vaporous state, and also its transformative state. So, who's the knower? The knower is the ever changing, ever unchanging awareness in the midst of changing sensations, sense perceptions, images, feelings, and thoughts. This knower is eternal. It's the ultimate reality, Brahman, as the source and essence of everything, existing beyond the material world and its limitations. The various elements that constitute the field, including the five senses, both subtle and gross, the mind, the intellect, and the ego, and these are then projecting as the experience of the universe. So the emptiness I'm speaking of is not emptiness, it's pure consciousness, which is infinite possibilities, infinite correlation, infinite evolution, infinite self-regulation, and infinite creativity. The randomness that we see is the unpredictability of creativity. So the source of the universe is a creative consciousness that is modifying itself as experiences. Even the stars and the moon and the ocean and the trees and the rocks, as far as we are concerned, we experience them through our sense perceptions and images and feelings and thoughts. That's the basic raw material through which we experience everything, including our mind, our body, rocks, trees, stars, and all these. So each of these experiences is both species specific, it's also culture specific, and it's individual specific. In other words, there is a multiverse, but it is a multiverse created by the projections of species specific consciousness. And as there are as many universes as sentient beings, and within the sentient beings are infinite variations also, because no sentient being is conditioned in exactly the same way. As far as we are concerned, it is our conditioned mind that is projecting the body, and through the body, the experience of the universe. They're entangled. And all these vrittis are entangled. This model does away with all the gaps in modern cosmology, because modern cosmology is based on naive realism, which is that the nature of the world, the essential nature of the world, is the human perception of it. That if humans disappeared, it would still exist as perceived by humans. And that, on the face of it, is very naive realism. And that's okay, because naive realism helps us create the science we have today, which is very useful. But it does not get us closer to truth. The only truth is by going within and experiencing the source of all experience, which is pure consciousness. And then looking at each of those modifications through mindful awareness and recognizing that everything that we perceive is a modified projection of our conditioned mind. And that actually is extremely valuable, because understanding that the universe is as a source, which is pure consciousness, and we can actually go back to that source of all experience through various yogic and mental practices and self-reflection, inquiry, mindfulness in the five senses, mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the interior of the body, interoceptive awareness, mindfulness of mental space, mindfulness of the web of relationship, and ultimately back to the source, awareness of awareness, simply self-awareness. This is a much more satisfying cosmology, in my view, And it answers all the conundrums as well, because dark energy, dark matter then become the subconscious realm of the infinite consciousness. And all these precise calculations, the unpredictable movement of atoms, a universe fine-tuned for mind and consciousness, and our own bodies and our own consciousness all become clear as the creative impulse of pure consciousness. You can call it Brahman, you can call it Allah, you can call it Ein Sof, you can just call it it. But the it is inscrutable, mysterious, unfathomable, cannot be imagined, but allows us to imagine, cannot be seen, but allows us to see, cannot be heard, but allows us to hear, cannot be thought of, but allows us to think and feel and relate to each other, and ultimately even manifests as language, which then evolves into multiple large language models and mathematical language and musical language. Such is the creative dreaming of the cosmos. Cosmic dreams is what the universe is. Let me know if you find this useful.